First alert weather evening here on May 20th, right around 10 a.m. We're about 12 hours out exactly from when the thunderstorms are going to be moving into Knoxville, and I want to give you that first alert of what we're seeing. So we'll see some filtered sunshine for most of the day, and a lot of you might be thinking, well, where is it all? But this is primarily an evening into the early overnight. Unlike what we just had Saturday morning, a lot of you will be awake during much of this. Do have to talk about weather radio and having multiple ways to get those warnings. Before we do that, I'm going to update my phone here and make sure that we can get your questions, because I want this to be as back and forth as possible. So I will turn my phone down so I don't hear myself twice, and then we will get to your questions. So as far as the weather radios go and having multiple ways to get the warnings, TV, charge cell phone, tablet, just in case you lose power. You can use the internet from your phone or tablet. But as far as the weather radio goes, which I have one, hopefully you have one, and it's set up to the transmitter, the Weather Service in Nashville is undergoing this, it's called AWIPS, software upgrade. It was pre-planned, but it's just kind of a bad timing. And so it's possible that your transmitter may be down for the night in Fentress and Cumberland County. So have other ways to get the warnings. All right, so the fronts bring in gusty showers and storms 8 to midnight. A big cool down to follow. A few showers out there today. Already had one coming into work. And gusty thunderstorms. Again, the main time frame for our whole area is 8 to midnight. Maybe 7:30, maybe 12:30 at the end, but that's pretty close. And the timing has not changed at all. Neither has the biggest threats, straight line winds, especially west of I-75, coming off the plateau. I would imagine Morgan, Fentress, Cumberland, and possibly McCreary is going to have the most of that. Can't rule out an isolated tornado. Again, that's isolated, not the biggest threat. If one were to form, though, it could be a little stronger than typical, as we're in a hatched zone. There's your time frame. It's going to continue to rain into the early morning, but a lot of that severe threat is going to wrap up within the hour of when it starts. So first alert weather day, let's get right to the timeline. This is what you're here for. No changes. 8 o'clock. Wayne County's outside of our area, but it's still on the maps. That's Monticello. By 9 o'clock, we've got these big lines of thunderstorms, and there could be a couple supercells you see towards Ray and Meigs and McMinn County. And then it forms into a bow segment. Think of a bow and arrow. If I were to point it, it would be pointing towards Knoxville. A few of those are possible. And by the way, we'll go through this twice, so it may seem a little bit repetitive, but you got to remember, people are going to be joining us all the time here on Facebook Live, so I want them to be able to catch this live. High straight line wind threat for tonight in this hot pink color. It keeps moving back and forth closer to the I-75 corridor, but just plan on really high winds, gusts in excess of 60 miles an hour, tree damage, trees fall a power line, you get a power outage, and a moderate risk across the rest of the I-75 corridor. All right, here's that rainfall forecast where you live. Note this is just one map's representation of the rain, but that could be some pretty white knuckle driving if you're out around 10 o'clock tonight. You know, pretty intense. I was actually just talking to one of our engineers who was out late Friday night, and he said, I heard you talking about how heavy the rain was when you're actually out. He's like, man, it was hard to see. That's going to be repeat tonight around 10 o'clock in Knoxville. So just a different way to see that storm timeline, perhaps as early as 7 Eastern, probably closer to 8 o'clock Eastern in Crossville. So as you're wrapping up dinner, we all eat at different times. Hey, guys, do you see any questions yet? I do want to make sure. I don't see any, but want to make sure that we get questions if they're coming in. What's that? Okay. So 8 to 10 for the west side of the valley, closer to 10 o'clock arrival time at Knoxville. So if it were me and I wasn't working tonight, I would be home by 10 just for, I don't like driving in rain at night. That's that heavy. But I'll be here with you guys, updating you on case any of these storms go severe. And then another key here is that the humidity absolutely goes off a knife's edge tomorrow. It's going to feel beautiful Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Let's kick this off from the top. Meteorologist Ben Cathy, 10:09, talking to First Alert arriving to Knoxville in just about 12 hours on the dot. I want to make sure you guys can get your questions in. See, we got more people joining us on Facebook Live. Look, right now, translucent clouds. This is like the true view, we call it. So a lot of sunshine, a lot of humidity, a lot of warmth. It's going to be a sticky day. The AC working hard as we get to 86. A couple showers around 5. Again, that's not the primary line. We've got more storms closer to 8 to midnight. 8 to midnight is the time frame for our 25 counties. And we'll show you what it looks like down to the minute in your town. Really good chance. What is it? What we got? Okay. Rick asks, what is the chance of hail? Now, there is going to be some hail, but by far, wind is the bigger issue. But I would still try to park in the garage if you can, just because even if it doesn't hail, you don't want branches or something to fall on you. And gusty storms rolling in. Damaging wind, again, is leading the charge. We have that rare high-risk threat. That's 5 out of 5 for hail. And you see the hail's lower to medium. I actually think we might swap it with tornado. Unfortunately, the tornado threat on the plateau is a little higher. Technically, this is where it can get a little technical, but it's a 10% chance of a tornado within 25 miles of that area. Kind of hard to visualize, but it's a higher chance of a spin-up type tornado on the plateau. But yeah, a lot of us are going to have very high winds. Rain begins on the plateau closer to 8 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Central. Gets to Knoxville close to 10. When I say Knoxville, it's not just Knoxville. It's Maynardville, Claiborne County, Anderson County is probably 9:30. All the way down, but we'll show you that timeline. I'll go really slow for that. How does it look for New Tazewell tonight? Peggy asks. Very stormy, closer to 10:30 probably, and then it continues for an hour or so. What does Wednesday afternoon look like? I have a fishing guide trip. Ooh, that sounds fun. That's from Daniel. Wednesday looks really good. Very isolated shower north of Fort Loudon. A little cooler, a lot less humid. Amber says, what is the risk in Morgan County? There is that high wind risk, and I think Morgan County could have some wind damage tonight. Probably closer to 8:30 Eastern. Oak Ridge, same thing as far as a wind threat. So let's walk you through it now. This should answer up most of your questions. 8 o'clock, this is just one map, but the timing is pretty consistent and has been. 8 o'clock rolling into Monticello and Jamestown. Crossville probably closer to 8:30 or 7:30 Central. I know the back and forth timing is probably a little confusing, but we have 2 time zones in our area. By 9:30 to 10 into places like Clinton, La Follette, Oak Ridge, Norma, Huntsville. It's been raining for a little bit there. Loudon, Lenore City, Madisonville. So I'm going to just list off a bunch of towns here. Maryville closer to 10 o'clock start time. If we had damaging winds, it would be right around the start of those storms. And I think especially 8 to 10 is the main time frame for damaging wind potential, generally speaking. I think the storms could be weakening a little bit as they approach Gatlinburg at, like, let's say 10:45 to 11. And by this point, we're in Newport, Morristown, Greenville, Mossheim, Sevierville, Kodak, Jefferson City, Tellico Plains. High winds, how high? Above 60 miles an hour. That's from Helen. What about Caryville? You just saw the time frame there. Ashley, so 9:30ish, maybe 10, around the high winds. But a lot of people will be up around that time. I mean, it's summer vacation for a lot of folks, so you may be up later. People asking about the high wind. This is just the high wind threat. This is not factoring in tornado, hail, flooding, lightning, none of that, just high wind. And high risk for, let's just say, close to the I-75 corridor, right? I know this doesn't match up exactly, but we could have gusts 60, 70 miles an hour. A storm officially becomes severe above 58 miles per hour. And just have multiple ways to get the warnings tonight, right? Fentress and Cumberland County could be without weather radio because of a previously scheduled software upgrade. Boy, that's a mouthful. But if you can hit a different transmitter with your weather radio, that would be great. And make sure to have it battery powered as well. I like to plug mine in, but just in case you lose power, and make sure you have your phones charged. You know, obviously we think the WVLT First Alert Weather app is great, but if you have something else, you know, just have ways to get the warnings just in case. And this is the high wind threat going into Knoxville, but gusts above 60 are certainly possible for most. How about Tazewell, Barbara? If you go back a little earlier in the chat, we talked about New Tazewell. What are the chances of tornadoes? Okay. Tornado threat is highest in Fentress and Cumberland counties, and they could be a little stronger than typical. I do think it is highest right over Nashville, actually. There's something called NATOcast, which is a machine learning program, and it has a little spike over Nashville. Lesser for us, but there is a 10% chance of a tornado within 25 miles of the Crossville and Jamestown areas. But by far more widespread is the damaging straight line wind threat. What are the chances? So Keisha, hopefully that answers your question as well. Missy asks about Oliver Springs. High winds the biggest threat, closer to 930 there. And again, this is all tonight. By tomorrow, it's quiet. Rainfall forecast tonight, also going to be very heavy. Now, rain doesn't make a storm severe, but boy, it is going to be some white-knuckle driving. So let's take you south towards Chilhowie and Madisonville. About a couple inches are possible. Jamestown, heavy stuff. Sometimes it gets caught on the plateau, for lack of a better term, and so you can get more downpours there. Wouldn't be surprised if we get a flash flood warning or two. James asked, if I remember right, rainstorms are forecasted for this afternoon. So he's talking about the separate little complex. Would that knock the storm out a bit or not at all? Yes, it could a little bit, but there's a lot of trailer energy and only about a 40% chance of those around 4 o'clock. But if it did cool us down, that would be helpful. What about Dandridge? Diane, if you go back a little earlier, we talked about Dandridge, but it'll be arriving for you closer to probably 10:30. What are the chances of a tornado in Dandridge? Again, that is you know, too speculative for a specific town, but it is lesser than the plateau. I'll leave this up for a second because it does show you the arrival time. Maybe a little too slow, or maybe, sorry, a little too fast. I think it'll probably start around closer to 8, but 8 to 10 in Knoxville, closer to 10. And then 10 to probably 11 start time elsewhere. You're welcome, Keisha and Diane. Let me see. How much rain for Monroe County? That data has about 2 inches. But by tomorrow, it's beautiful. Much of today is beautiful, but you can kind of tell something's coming. I think Helen, I answered your question about how high the winds. And I think I've got everybody's question so far. But anyways, this is kind of a maybe a little too fast storm time frame. Also have that excessive rainfall risk for today as part of the first alert. But we ran through this twice, and hopefully we caught everybody's questions. First alert tonight, 8 to 12. I'm going to head home for a kind of a split shift, and I'll be back to join Spencer for team coverage for the first alert, 8 to 12. High wind the biggest threat, but can't rule out the isolated tornado and a ton of rain. Meteorologist Ben Cathy, we'll see you later on in the day.